Ladies and gentlemen, what's happening now? And welcome to Derry Nostalgic. My name is D. Kern, and as always, this service is brought to you by Paul Martin Menswear. If you're a first-time viewer of the Derry Nostalgic series, may I recommend you view some of our previous episodes, such as Gary Beckett's recollection of the 1997 Irish International Soccer Tournament, including the game in which Derry City defeated Glasgow Celtic. Paul McLaughlin's episode where he discusses the three semi-final games against Bohemians back in 1995, and our most recent episode with Lucas Schubert, who recalls his debut against Drogheda United back in 2016. New interviews and episodes will be uploaded in the coming weeks, so make sure that you subscribe to this channel and also put on that notifications bell so that you are notified the second an episode is uploaded. 2006 is a season that is often talked about among Derry City fans, especially given their summer escapades to Europe. In between both legs of the UEFA Cup qualifying match against PSG, Derry City played two games against then rivals Shelbourne, which would change their domestic fortunes. Firstly, the Eircom League of Ireland Cup was held at the Brandywell on September 18th and was memorable for two red cards and a penalty shootout. Then on Friday, September 23rd, they faced the same opponents at Tolka Park in a top-flight encounter marred by controversial refereeing decisions. I hope you're sitting comfortably, because I'm going to revisit both of these games with a player not long returned to his hometown club in 2006. He had played in both of these games and even scored the decisive penalty in the shootout. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to get Derry Nostalgic with Darren Kelly. In the summer of 2006, you had returned to Derry City from Portadown. What was your motivation to come back to the club?
My hometown club. I remember when I signed for Portadown, it was literally the day, do you know what it was either the day of or the day after Stephen Kenny got in touch. I pleaded and begged Portadown to release me in my contract, even though I only signed it a day. It's because Derry had come in for me. There was no inkling of anything, because bear in mind, at that time, they had Clive Delaney, they had Ken Oman, they had Pizza, Mark McChrystal, I think, was there as well. They had some top centre-back, so I had just no inkling. And then it wasn't a time where you had an agent. I didn't have an agent. You had nobody that could sort of try and find out. And as I say, it was the day of or the day after. It was just too late. Obviously, when I signed for Derry, it was actually quite a funny story. When the Portadown contract was up, I remember setting up a meeting with Stephen, and I was going to meet him in the Everglades Hotel. And naturally, you're thinking, right, I'm moving home. This is brilliant. The goosebumps, the excitement. That feeling, the butterflies. And I remember in my head playing, I said, right, God, he's going to ask me about money. It's never about money or anything like that, but it's a natural question that follows into the conversation. With a great chat, and he told me what he wanted and things like that. I thought, brilliant. And he offered me a lot more money than what I had in my head. I thought, right, okay. My deal was done in 20 seconds, just returning home to play for my hometown club, because that's where it started. I mean, that's where the ambition sort of was to finish, but obviously it didn't pan out that way. But, I've made 237 appearances, and I'm just so proud of the appearances that I've made.
As a player who was contesting that warm summer and the volume of fixtures, how did you feel in that moment?
No, unbelievable. Because I was ready. And mind even assigned, and I was doing a bit of training and things like that. But I remember, obviously, we had always the battles with shells and things. But I remember looking at the Derry City team, and the bloody good side. The big thing was I embraced the challenge, because you had top centre backs there, as I say. You had Mark McChrystal, you had Clive Delaney, you had Ken Oman, and you had Pizza. Wow, if you want to battle for a position, that's it. And when I got that opportunity, it didn't look back. I think the only game, it's like in Europe, I think it was the only one to play every minute, every game. The FAI Cup, I missed out in the final, which I'm glad in a way we did, because Clive scored.
Well, we're going to talk about two games in September of that year. The first one, September 18th, it's the League Cup final. The match itself was a cagey one, and it was hampered by terrible rain throughout the night. But Liam Coyle, I'm just going to read what Liam Coyle wrote in his Derry Journal column. He had wrote about the match. To be brutally honest, there was not 1 ounce of football played by Derry City during the 2 hours that were on show. Is that how you remember that League Cup final?
That's about it. Even today, day I was trying to go back everything in my memory of the games, and it was just a scrap, a strange, surreal experience. What helped, and even before we spoke, looking at the clips in that and YouTube, and it brought a lot of it back, because funny enough, a lot of games I played, because it was almost, you're in the zone and that, I haven't remembered many games. But it's just, I do remember night, it was, obviously the sendings offs and all that day as well. And just everything was against us. To get that win then, that release. And I remember even when I scored, obviously, the third penalty, running over to our supporters. From our side, as as the players and the supporters, we were all in it as one. And to get that result then at the end was just amazing.
Were you always supposed to hit a penalty, or did you just elect yourself whenever the time came?
Do you know what? I always fancied myself with a penalty. I nominated myself. I said, I'll hit a penalty. I'll hit a penalty. I was confident. Maybe if it didn't have a good game, I would have thought differently. And that's the thing about confidence, isn't it? If you're confident and you finish the game strong and you feel. I remember that walk down, and I had all this pictured in my head of where it was going to go and what I was going to do when I scored. And it was run over to our supporters, who were obviously just to the left of me.
It was Ian Stokes who was the referee that night, and the normal time in the 84th minute, he sends off David Ford, and on comes Pat Jennings. Now, Pat predominantly was second choice during his tenure. Right. What was he like in and around the squad? Pat
was brilliant. We used to go to Badgers for a bit of chicken and mash before every game. Even looking back in that team, and even I was looking today, competition, again, I go back to the centre backs. I'm the same with the keepers. You just good, strong competition everywhere. There was all healthy competition. Pat had a good relationship with Fordy. That night, and the way it worked out, that's the way it was meant to be. Mm-hmm. Because you look at Pat, I scored the winning penalty. It was nothing to do with me. It was Pat Jennings' saves, The saves that he made, it was meant to be that. That's what was meant to happen. And the thing about Pat was actually, he was an outstanding keeper. Penalty saving, he was absolutely brilliant. 40, as much as he was brilliant and things like that, I think Pat was better saving penalties.
Was there much of a celebration, or did the trophy go in the office and it was business as usual ahead of the game in Tolka Park?
No, do you know what? Kenzo kept us very grounded. And I'll be honest, and I could speak about it now, we were a wee bit naughty in them. You're young, you're excited, you'll head out to the town or whatever. I remember we ended up in the Metro, and it was quite quiet. It was a Monday night, and some of the supporters, as always, we used to mingle with some of the supporters and everything. But I don't think if it was Monday night, Kenzo wouldn't have minded. The great thing for me personally was you never knew where you stood with him. I never thought, I'm going to be playing next week. And he kept you on your toes. That's a skill in itself. The point being on that, you were always mindful. Yeah, you can go out, but you knew not to be stupid, because he probably knew when, and there are times he would have had chats with players. If he heard things that he didn't like, you knew that you had to come in and train hard every day. And it was hard. It was tough, but it was enjoyable. Team togetherness, I've never experienced anything like it in my career, certainly, because Pizza was a brilliant captain as well. Pizza, if he needed to say something, if he thought players were getting too big for their boot, he'd say it.
Friday night, you go down to Tolka Park. It starts off in pulsating piss, and you actually have a hand in setting up Paddy McCord's goal. I know a lot of people talk about Paddy McCord in Celtic, about training. He was very difficult to get close to. Did you have the same experience in training against Paddy McCord?
The only way I could deal with Paddy McCord in training was to kick him. That was my game, head it and kick it. Let's be brutally honest about it. I've seen Paddy, I'm not going to name names. I've seen Paddy almost, leaving players in tears. He'd nutmeg him, be one-on-one with the keeper, but he'd bring it back deliberately to nutmeg that player again. Not in a humiliating way. But that was Paddy, great friend, one of the nicest people. Certainly one of, when you look at your Liam Coyles and people like that, Paddy's there, unbelievable. Paddy was the unfittest player you'll ever seen. Didn't think it was possible, but with Paddy it was. Paddy runs quicker with the ball than when Paddy runs without the ball. I don't know how it's physically possible, but it was unreal with the ball at his feet. The way he glide, that low sense of gravity, it was unbelievable. And
Kevin Derry scores a wonder goal for the second. In 2006, Dearzo didn't score many tap-ins, did he?
No, I didn't know. Just for, again, obviously it links into the whole Gretna thing as well. Dearso, I would compare him almost at that Steven Gerrard mold of a player, the position wise, but an absolute rocket of a right foot. His quality of passing, short, long range passing. But God, he couldn't have had a shot. Dearso, pinging diags and things like that. Very rarely give the ball away. You look at him in the team and that midfield that we have with Higgins and Malloy and Kieran Martin, and everybody was on their toes. That's why you had to perform week in, week out. That's why I think we had good success that year.
In the 44th minute, the big talking point happens where Paul Tuite sends Pat Jennings off. First of all, you go down with Eugene Ferry, but he doesn't sit on the bench. He's in the stands. Did anyone question it at the time?
No. And even looking back on it now, it's always that case. I always felt, and I think everybody, our supporters and all, when we went to Dublin back around then, it was always 11v12. You'd always 11 you're playing against, but you'd always the referee, as well. That again gave us more motivation. You had to be on top of your game. You had to be playing against these sort of 12, the 12 players in the opposition, and it was just a Derry thing for years. Almost just outplay, out muscle, out fight in every way, shape, or form that you could, because you knew that especially against the likes of your Shells and your Bohemians and things, your big sides over the years have had quality sides, and you knew you had to be at your best, but you knew you had to give more than your best. And I think Pat getting sent off, you didn't think of goalkeeper being sent off in that way, even obviously the week previous it happened to 40, but you sort of think it's not going to happen the week after, but lo and behold it did.
Yeah. You're actually quoted as saying that you didn't think Pat should have been sent off. You were the last man, not Pat. Do you still feel the same 18 years later?
Oh, no, absolutely. The refereeing's changed. I think if it was refereeing now, it wouldn't have been sent off without any shadow of a doubt. Pat wasn't the last man. I was 18 years later. I can still remember it.
If Pat stays on, does Derry won the game?
Oh, absolutely. But as I say, because at that stage, you're 10v12, aren't you? It was just a strength and belief that we had in the squad. We never, and even when we played Paris Saint-Germain and things like that, we always believed we could beat whoever's in front of us. If it's 9 men, like the week before, if it's 10 men, we always believed that. We always had that belief, even if we didn't have a recognised goalkeeper in nets.
Rumour and innuendo is that Paul Tuite, who was the referee, a few weeks later came to the changing room and apologised to the Derry City team, admitting that he made a mistake. Is this true?
I wasn't there if he did. And then would you have? I don't think you would have, because you had proper characters in the team, like a Pizza, Hargy, people like that. They might have said to them or whatever, because if you come into the team and say, I would have thought if that happened, it would have been a case that the referee would have had a meeting with Stephen and Pizza and Decky or something like that. He certainly didn't come into the change room and say anything.
When you speak to those who played in the 95 squad, they talk about that not winning the league that year was an injustice. Would you say the same about the 2006 squad?
Oh, aye. I look at the treble winning team and some quality, Liam and Felix and Stuart Gall, people I had the pleasure to work with. I look at even now, so many years on, how such even a big thing it is. Even I know the anniversary of it not so long back, and loved that to be us, because look back at that sort of team that won the treble with Jim McLaughlin and amazing people like that. No, I would loved us, but we were so close, and with the same point, we're just done in goal difference. We had conceded 20 goals that season. Shelbourne 27. Gutted. But do you know what, Dee? I'll be honest. Then I didn't think too much of it because I was a player. I was gutted. But see now, when I reflect upon my career, and that old saying goes, if only I'd have knew then, would I know now, it would have been different in many different ways. Obviously, you'd be that little bit immature, and then you get to the stage now, you reflect on things, and what I would do to win a treble. It's even like when we won the leagues, I was part of the squad. I was 2 appearances off getting the medal. I went over to Port Vale on trial, I went over to Nottingham Forest and that, and I'm sort of thinking, God, if I didn't go over there, I could have got them 2 other appearances and had a medal. Do you know what I mean? It's hindsight's a wonderful thing, but do. I look back at the previous success the clubs had, and I would love to, especially with such a great group of lads in 2006. We used to all go out together. We all get on so well together. You had people like Flinney, and there was characters, there was laughing, there was everything in that team. And again, I think the most important thing is, if you were going into war, you'd want certainly them players with you in the trenches.